the Arctic base in the background. Yeah, yeah. So if we come this way.
So what we're going to ask you is just a quick overview of why you're here, and then if there's whatever you want to say about the project, and then the other thing we say, another theme is that it's actually really quite yeah, but you know, and how we're reading
So if we get you coming this way, don't we?
yeah.
Tore Schatzan.
John. Yeah, exactly. Go on. If I can take you away for a second, please. Are we ready to go?
There we are.
Are we ready to go? Can someone please put this here? Hey! You have a logo. Hold on in. Just 1 second. Hi, I think I'm calling you. It's cold. We are trying to actually put our pole into it. It's right underneath the green thing, but we need to do the, do you have gloves? No key for that one. Well, I can do it. It's just we need to cover that, and for some reason, if you could help, underneath there is where we're planting the flag. Okay. Where, do we have people? I just called with an area. Yeah. There's snow up. So can we get the flag? So let's just start. It's 2 o'clock.
On air.
Just pause for a second. Yeah. If you could just down to the side or have one of the youth hold it. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, I'm walking.
Got the flag coming out.
We got the flag coming out? Okay.
Were we able to get any press?
Wall Street Journal called this morning. They want to let us know. If we can come over here.
Okay.
We're going to all stand on stage together. Okay, good. So I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah, so we're going to go like this. The running order is me, then Johan, then Wendy, then Carlos, and then Sandrine. You're on the anchor. I'm on the anchor. You're on the anchor. So Johan, you beside me? Yes, sir. Do we have only one microphone? Yeah, as far as I'm aware. So are we?
There's one on his chest.
That's okay.
Seconds.
Are both mics live?
What do you think about the
That's okay.
good? I also thought that it was really worth
If someone can
It might
count
be
us
the first
down.
time that there's a real science, really for science initiative at Lab.
There's another microphone there.
So I'm interrupting. So my suggestion is I'll pass on. Everybody just briefly says when it's your turn.
And what did we decide? Are we just going to do this and we're just going to play it by ear?
2 minutes each, and we go.
Okay, and then just keep on talking or
And then what
whatever.
we're going to do is we're going to
Because
walk
Jayepa's
over. They're going to
not
hand us
even
the flag. We're going to explain there's not enough snow to plant it, and we're going to plant it here, and then
Okay.
there'll be photographs, and then we'll just have to cover
Okay.
it as it continues to snow.
exactly.
Are we ready? Are we good? Okay, let's stand up, Avengers.
Okay.
Are we on?
This is a podium.
Hello, everybody. If you
louder.
could take your places, those of you that are sitting down, I see Katie and Anna and stuff. If you guys can come on over and sit, would be great. Do you tell me when, Rodrigo? Okay, well, count me down. We'll do 5, I think. Welcome, everybody. I'm Gail Whiteman. I'm the Hoffman Impact Professor for Accelerating Action on Nature and Climate at the University of Exeter, and I'm also the founder of Arctic Base Camp. Welcome to Base Camp at Davos. This is our 9th year of trying to speak science to power, and we're definitely back this year because it's a tough year for science, and there's a lot of headwinds against us. Thank you for coming to our event on Science in Action, and with science we win. And I'd like to pass on the stage to my wonderful scientific colleagues to say that science will be here at Davos until we fix the problem. Johan, over to you.
Thanks, Gail. So my name is Jan Rockström. I'm a professor in Earth System Science and heading the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. And there are 3 reasons why we are so deeply concerned and why we really need to have science on a winning path. The number one is that questioning climate science today is like questioning gravity. It's so overwhelmingly anchored in truth that the only pathway to the future is to stand on the foundation of science. The drama, though, is that the foundation that most who understand the climate science are standing on is actually underestimating risk and underestimating the pace of change. If you enter the labs of any climate science institution today and really come to the cutting edge of science, you see that warming is going faster than expected, climate tipping points are approaching, Earth resilience is declining, and carbon budgets are really dwindling down to almost zero. We are at an emergency point and need to move so fast to have a chance of handing over the planet for the next generations on watch, and it's our responsibility because the commitment time is within the next 5-10 years of what will happen over the next centuries, if not millennia. The third and final point is that we have so much evidence today that the transition towards a safe operating space on planet Earth is the winning path to a more prosperous, healthy, secure, and equitable future. Why miss that opportunity? That's the big question. Wendy.
Thank you, Johan.
Oh,
So my name's Wendy Broadgate. I'm the Global Hub Director of Future Earth, the world's biggest network of global sustainability scientists, and I'm also the Executive Director of the Earth Commission. So science is and should be the backbone of decision making. Science came together and informed the Paris Agreement of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees. We're now exceeding that, and look what's happening. The wildfires in LA, the extreme events that we're seeing. This is not a future that we want, and it's not a future that science is mapping out. We're mapping out a future. We know we need to do enormous transformations to have a stable and resilient planet. We need, for stable societies, we need that stable and resilient planet, and science is mapping out the way. So science is here to stay in Davos. We're here to hold hands with business and decision makers and to inform decisions based on evidence. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Carlos Nobre. I'm a professor at the University of São Paulo in Brazil. I'm also co-chair of the science panel for the Amazon. I just want to give you one example of the importance of science with respect to the Amazon. The Amazon is so close to the tipping point, so close. And we are scientists, Amazonian scientists, telling that for 30 years. And nothing is happening. Deforestation is still there. Global warming is still here. So really, you know, as my colleagues here were saying, we cannot wait much more. 10 more years, we are going to lose the Amazon. This is losing the greatest biodiversity, more than 200 billion tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So We really have to make science much more effective, a big challenge to all of us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandrine Dixon de Clèves, and I'm the former president of the Club of Rome and also the executive chair of Earth for All. I'm also an advisor to governments, and right now what I'm advising is not only is science here to stay, but science is not up for sale. And I think it's very important that we remember that already prior to 1972, when the Club of Rome published the Limits to Growth, demonstrating a series of scenarios that actually showed social and environmental tipping points based on the social sciences, based on climate and environmental sciences. We're going to culminate at this moment. This is the moment that we're living. We don't have another 50 years. From 1972 to today, we did not put in place the action that was necessary to get us away from 1.5 degrees. So here we are. We are here to not only stay in Davos, but to use this as a moment to say that together, united as scientists from multi-disciplines, we will be going to all the big, large international gatherings and reminding policymakers that decision-based evidence is the only way that we have an alternative future.
I'm Joyita Gupta from the University of Amsterdam and also an ex-commissioner of the Earth, a commissioner of the Earth Commission. What has justice got to do with science? Well, science shows you that without justice, there's no way we can live within the boundaries. For example, if you look at our safe boundaries, they're good to make sure that the planet does not destabilize. But you need just boundaries to ensure that you protect people and you protect nature long before the boundaries have been crossed, the safe boundaries have been crossed, and the tipping elements have been crossed. So you need just boundaries, and just boundaries are more stringent than safe boundaries, and so they give you less space in which to operate. Now let's look at the issue of poverty. We see that today a large portion of the global population does not have access to food, water, energy, infrastructure, healthcare, education. Now, if we do not take those people with us in the global transformation, then they will use their water resources, they will cut down the last tree, they will use they will use fossil fuel, and that is going to make it much more difficult for the rest of us to achieve these targets. And hence, it's very important for us to try to make sure that the entire world participates in the energy and food transformation. And if they don't have the resources, then we in the global north have to do that. And that is what science tells us to do. And we are here to tell all the people over here that you went to university and we taught you. And we are now here to tell you once more that you have to listen to us, because it's very important for the survival of our children and our grandchildren and for all the other species that share this world with us. Thank you.
So to mark this occasion, Arctic Base Camp has been here on the top of this mountain for 9 years. We are not going anywhere, and we are uniting across the scientific communities with my guests here, but also well beyond that. And to mark this, we have developed a campaign called With Science, We Win. And we have a flag. Now, I do have to say, there is not enough snow in Davos to bury this flag. So we've sort of got a mashup here on how we're going to do that. But if I can ask everybody to come off the stage and come over here with me, who has my flag? Come on down.
Oh, I see. We're going to put it in here?
We have to. Yeah, it will work. Yeah? If we just need to do that we need to step it.
Yeah, nice. Good idea. Okay, I'll put it in the middle.
You get a close-up of this in action. This is science in action, hands-on, people. There's not that many of those.
It doesn't work. Yeah. So we need to put some snow.
So I think, does it?
Yeah, we've got this, yes. Christmas tree, come here to the front, Johan. So, with your help, we will be here every year. We will put this flag up every year until we win for a safe and just world. Thank you very much.
And please join us in this campaign. This is about building a community. Thank you, Gail.
Yeah, fantastic. Really good initiative.
Yep. Cool. Hey, John. All right, now the paparazzi's here with us. It's always good. Okay. After this, we have a panel inside the tent from 2:45 till 4:45. So join us for that, Science in Action, where we'll go through some opportunities. But thanks to those that can't stay, including you, Jan.
I want to thank Gail and the Arctic Base Camp, and also Helen, who's here somewhere, for all her incredible work. This came out of a conversation that Gail and I had over WhatsApp about how we really needed to mark this space, and seeing all of us so devastated by what's happening, especially this week with the inauguration. We had thought that maybe Trump would be here today. I think it's better that he's not. But the fact of the matter is that we agreed, because we were so emotional, that we needed to do something about it. So this is a first step. We're still very emotional. That's what we've just been saying to each other here. Let's carry that emotion into a way in which we can really continue to fight and honor those many scientists that have brought us so much evidence, that have demonstrated what we're living today is a true reality, but that there is still possibility to reverse that reality. So really, let's stand together as a community in that grief, but knowing that we need to rise from the grief as a phoenix often does, right? Thank you.
Oh! Bianca! I know.
You did very well.
I'm glad it was your hand, otherwise it'd have been your face, Gail.
Overexcitement. Okay. Okay. Overexcitement. Got it. Yes.
Can I just
Thank
squeak?
you. Yes. Okay. Let's.
So what are we doing, you? Do you want Rodrigo with this mic? This, yeah, testing. Testing, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Audio okay, going into the stream.
Yeah, you ready? We're just grabbing people's GPs to camera. So we're doing Wendy first?
Yeah, and then we'll do Drita.
So if you could say, oh, I know who you are.
I can do it. I can say who I am.
Stand in front of the flag. Whereabouts? You tell me. Here?
3 sentences, maybe?
Because, you know, unlike what happened in LA, when there are a lot of very strong winds, meteorological streams, always associated with a lot of rain. So when we had the record-breaking winds associated with a lot of rain, so lightning strikes, but so much rain in Europe.
I'm Wendy Broadgate. Okay. I'm Wendy Broadgate. I'm the Global Hub Director of Future Earth, based in Stockholm. I've just gone blank, that's all. We won't solve our political and our societal problems without a stable and resilient planet. We're in a planetary emergency, and science is showing the way. Science is here to stay at Davos, and we're here to work with businesses, with governments, and to underpin decision-making with evidence.
Well done, Wendy. Perfect. Perfect.
I need that kind of pep.
Yeah, no, there was not a lot of prep.
Can't you, with
Don't-
my little blank?
Yeah, of course. No, you're good. You're good. It was all good. And then I think we should have Jane. Sure. And then Carlos. Yeah.
Just tell us when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm just reframing.
I'm Joyita Gupta, professor at the University of Amsterdam. What has science and justice got in common? Science shows us that without taking a just approach, it is impossible to save our planet and to make life possible for everybody. Science shows us that more than 78% of the remaining fossil fuel is in the developing world. And it is imperative for rich countries and rich people all over the world to enable the just transformation of the energy and food systems in the global south to ensure that we can all live within the safe and just planetary boundaries. Science shows us that we have to meet the minimum needs of people worldwide, otherwise they will use alternative means. These minimum needs have to be met by using methods that are able to achieve meeting those needs without an environmental footprint. And that requires money. And therefore, science shows us that environmental investments by rich people is an absolute must for the developing world. Thank you. Okay.
That's it. That's a wrap. I just needed to pause and not say anything at the end.
Sorry.
Stay in character.
Sorry.
Okay, we've got one more. Carlos, and then Jane, can we also do you? What's the assignment? We'll do Carlos. We'll just put you beside the side and just say why.
You're very close.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a step back. A little bit. And you can drop your back.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Science will explain why we reached 1.5 degrees 2023, 2024. It's a big surprise, but thousands of scientists are trying to explain. And there is a tremendous risk that we will not go beyond 1.5 degrees forever. So science has to demonstrate what's going on. And if science demonstrates that we have already reached 1.5 degrees, then COP30 in November in Belém, Brazil, will have to be a COP that will have to show that we need to go much faster finding nature-based solutions, getting to zero emissions, not by 2050, but by 2040. So I'm pretty sure science is advancing a lot to demonstrate that we have to go in that direction. Thank you.
Helen, just make a short clip when I'm standing out here and they're doing their thing in the whole environment. I never have pictures of me working. I'm always behind camera.
So you don't want to be smiling and looking at me, you need to be.
No, I just in action.
Well, congratulations for what? Blue Steel. Blue Steel. Everyone, you do it. 1, 2, 3.
Any can rip off Blue Steel is going to be you.
Let me get one of you both doing that, please. One more, Rodrigo.
Yes, sure.
Oh. You don't hear it. This way.
Whenever you're ready, we have a short pause. And after we have a short pause.
I saw that. So I'm Jane Madgwick, Executive Director of the Global Commons Alliance. Why do we need to stand by science? Because without science, we're really flying blind, and that's a very risky thing to do. And we're flying into all sorts of disasters, and everybody's feeling that on the planet. The Global Commons Alliance stands for collective action. We recognise that all kinds of actors are making a difference, a positive difference around the world, but unless we join this up, we're not going to make it. And science actually gives us the plausible pathways that we can transform how we live and how we manage natural resources. We can actually reach that safe and just future if we follow it. It's not going to be easy, but we're here to bring together collective action for that change. Not just commitments, but really moving into action. With citizens, with cities, with countries, all over the world, we can make this big change.
Thank you, Jane. No, James, we need blue steel interviews.
Do you want to come inside?
Please go over there, in front of the flag. Say your piece.
Yeah, come inside the tent. We'll put you in the tent.
Why should science get taken? Why should people follow the science?
What do we need to do? Why are we here? Why you're a scientist.
Mariah, do you want to go first?
Come on. Watch out.
You go first. Let Mariah go first then. I'm trying to remember what I said.
Okay, good. Let me see. A little step that way.
Is everyone like naturally saying this, or are they reading anything? Has anyone been reading off anything? No.
It just went off the top of my.
Oh.
So we're gonna make a short. I'm gonna say it like that, something like that. You just freeze, short pause. Whenever you're ready, go.
Okay.
When you're done, don't tell me like, okay, that was good. I'm done. Just quiet. Count to 3 in your head, and then we're done. Okay?
Will you tell me when I'm done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once you're done, you just
Just stay in there. Okay. Okay.
so I'm gonna do like that, and then you just quiet. Count to 3, and then right.
Okay.
Okay. Not much information, right?
Yeah.
And I'm standing here because it's much easier to look at me than to look at this thing, inanimate object.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to see.
Okay. So you're gonna show me your hands to go. Yes. My name's Mariah Cedar. Okay. My name's Mariah Cedar, and science matters because alongside communities, researchers can help undiscovered. My name's Mariah Cedar, and science matters because alongside communities, research. I don't know what to say. My name's Mariah Cedar, and science matters because along with researchers and communities, we can make a sustainable and healthier future for our future generation. Yep.
No, that's it?
Yeah.
You're blanked?
Yeah.
Patience. We have time.
You said 10 seconds.
No, but we can do takes. No stress. And it's not 10 seconds, more like 2 minutes. 1 minute. In 1 minute. It all went like 1 minute.
James, I want to watch James, please.
Watch it. Inspiration.
Yes.
Inspirational James.
Two. Okay, do 2.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. How are my levels? The levels like this, microphone like this. Can you hear me? You're concentrating. Yeah?
Half step back. Another half step.
I'm back where I started. My name is James Grecian. I'm the polar scientist in residence here at Arctic Base Camp and a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Durham. And I'm going to do this again.
Why are we here? Why should we listen to science?
My name is James Grecian. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at...
You should always do it on the first take and just go with it.
How many half steps? My name is...
but who's got Wendy's slides?
Lovely, they're on the.
We can hook them up.
Can I have you? James can do this.
Do it 30 seconds, James. Just rip it off, bandage, just go. Nothing matters. Whatever you do is good. Serious. Okay, 3.
My name is James Grecian. I'm polar scientist in residence here at Arctic Base Camp and a postdoc researcher at Durham University. We need science to speak truth to power. We need science to understand the challenges that society is facing, to understand the impact of the climate crisis, and that search for those truths will help us to understand how we can best adapt to the changes that we're already seeing.
But you always look elegant. She's saying that about me because 99% of the time I don't look elegant.
I'm teasing. You
I
can't
did
win,
not
eh?
say.
Can't win, right? A little bit of humor.
Some people just have it in spades.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just arranged in a tent.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. You're an ecologist by background.
Conservation scientist as well. Being a manager since I was about 30, which is
A little while. Yeah. A little while.
trying to get
Where'd you
done.
live, Jane?
Live in the Netherlands now. Lived all over the place.
I live in Rotterdam. Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, I used to be a faculty at the University of Amsterdam. So where are you talking? Oh, you're driving. Oh, we should definitely. It's not that far. Yeah, it's crazy. You've been there. Are you ready to go? Yeah. Okay. Come on in. Look, there's a lovely spot for you right there. Yes. Are we good to go? Okay, well. Are we on? We are. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am Gail Whiteman. I'm the Hoffman Impact Professor for Accelerating Action on Nature and Climate. I'm also the founder of Arctic Base Camp. So welcome to Base Camp. You're here in a real Arctic science tent that is the type of tent that's taken into the field in the far north. And this is a tent that we've been camping in for the last 9 years at Davos, including the smaller sleeping tents outside. The mission of Arctic Base Camp is to speak science to power. And we came to Davos in 2017 because we felt that there wasn't enough scientific voices at the World Economic Forum. We rocked in with our tent. We had Vice President Gore and Christiana Figueres and a number of others kick us off, and we haven't stopped since that time. We've certainly seen the role of science go up and to some degree go a little bit down alongside the World Economic Forum and the side events that we hear at Davos. I think this is a particularly challenging year given that we've got strong headwinds in a changing geopolitical landscape, not just the new U.S. administration, but much beyond that. I live in the Netherlands, and we've already seen some anti-climate science government thought from that location as well. So it's not one country, it's not one politician. In fact, it's multiple headwinds against science. That being said, Arctic Base Camp's not going anywhere, and we've really aligned this year in this panel with multiple other sciences. So I'm really, really delighted to be able to host this session here at Arctic Base Camp called Science to Action. We've got a number of panelists that are going to come in, and it's an informal conversation. Great, Jacob, come on in. Come, you can. There's a spot here or there. You can sit. So come on, sit down, or right at the front. I might pull you up later, Jacob. So be careful. Be careful. I'm going to start off with Wendy Broadgate from Future Earth and Joyita Gupta, who's a professor at University of Amsterdam and, of course, an Earth Commissioner. And I'm going to let them have a conversation about a just and safe operating space. So welcome, my fellow professors, and floor is over to you.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you for inviting us to be here. It's very exciting to be representing science here in Davos in this cozy tent, a very packed tent, and it's great to see everyone who's here. I'm Wendy Broadgate. I'm the Global Hub Director at Future Earth. We host the Earth Commission, which I will tell you a little bit more about, along with Joyita. But ultimately, the Earth Commission is defining the boundaries for a safe and a just planet. The work is designed to underpin target setting for companies, so to help guide companies, cities, and governments to live and bring us within these Earth system boundaries. So we're deep into the Anthropocene. You may have seen these charts before. They're not new, but they're very concerning. There are 24 charts, 12 of socioeconomic trends, the things that we are doing to the planet. Population growth, the increase in large dams, water use, primary energy use. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the effects on the Earth system of our human pressures. Interestingly, all of these graphs have an acceleration in the 1950s. They go from pre-industrial through to the present day, and all have this acceleration in the 1950s. That is where we define the start of the Anthropocene, where humans become the biggest driver of change on the planet. These graphs have not been updated since 2010, but we know they're moving rapidly forward. We're deep into the Anthropocene, and it's very concerning. What are the consequences of such an acceleration? I would say we are rapidly approaching tipping points in the Earth system. There are 16 tipping points on this chart. The 4 biggest dots are those tipping points that are likely to be onset at 1.5 degrees. So we're very much in the risk zone of these 4. They are loss of West Antarctic ice sheet, boreal permafrost melt, the Greenland ice sheet loss, and the complete loss of tropical coral reefs. These are tipping points that once onset are irreversible. So they're very, very worrying trends. And ultimately, the boundaries that we're setting, that we're defining, are to keep us within, to avoid us crossing these tipping points. So Future Earth set up a commission of scientists to define safe and just boundaries for the planet, to define transformation pathways for society to bring us within those boundaries, but also to understand the methodologies of how do we downscale these boundaries to be targets that different actors, businesses, individuals, cities, companies can take to live within these boundaries. Future Earth appointed a group of about 20 experts, of which Joita is one of them. Joita was the co-chair in our first assessment, along with Johan Rockström, who was speaking earlier, and set to work in 2019 and have now published the first assessment that we will describe. But this science is not happening in a vacuum. This scientific commission was set up to be the scientific cornerstone of an alliance of actors that are working to be stewards of the global commons. And that alliance is the Global Commons Alliance, and Jane will be speaking later on about how we're taking this science into the action space. So we took the planetary boundaries framework, which defines safe boundaries for a stable and a resilient planet to avoid us crossing tipping points. We assessed all the science that's out there for this natural space. We've done it for 5 domains of the planetary boundaries: aerosols, climate, the biosphere, the water cycle, and nutrients. The Earth system operates as an interconnected system. Each of these domains critically depend on each other, and we as people and all of life on Earth depends on these interacting domains. These are the cycles of life that support us. And we have set boundaries to say we must live within these boundaries in order to preserve that natural life support system for us on planet Earth. But interestingly, bringing on board a gang of social scientists into the Earth Commission, we took a social approach to this as well and concluded that we needed to embed justice in these boundaries. And I'll hand over to Joita to continue the story.
So a lot of people think that justice is a normative issue, and so they don't see the role of science in that. But in fact, increasingly, justice is no longer a normative issue, but an imperative to analyze. So what happens is when you look at the planetary boundaries, there are boundaries beyond which you have irreversible change to the systems that support life on Earth. But that's not necessarily just for humans or even for other species. You probably need a boundary which tries to ensure that the most of the negative impacts on people and species are minimized. And that's when we started looking at just boundaries. So for example, 1.5 degrees is seen as a safe boundary, but 1 degree is seen as a just boundary because at 1 degree already 70 million people are at risk of losing their lives because of extreme heat and extreme humidity. And that's just one of the various impacts of climate change. And we also saw that other elements, for example, nitrogen, as well as aerosols, had to have a tightened boundary because of the justice implications. And moreover, we probably still will want to come back and look at groundwater and surface water to see if they can be also having a just storyline to them. Now, when we look at these boundaries, let's take, for example, water. In our water story, we are basically saying that when you look at the water streams, you must make sure that they do not vary more than 20% in relation to baseline periods. Now, if you take 1750 or 1850 as your baseline, that's pretty difficult to achieve because in Europe and in the rest of the world, the rivers have changed a lot. Nevertheless, the idea is to try to preserve the rivers in such a manner that the downstream countries and people get water, as well as the species. Another boundary I'd just like to discuss with you is the biosphere integrity target. And this basically says that every square kilometer of land, of managed land, should have 20 to 25% green. And this is not just for the bees and the earthworms that cover small distances. It's also basically for our psychology, to feel good, to see a tree outside, but it's also to make our gardens look good and our natural area feel aesthetic and pleasing to the eye, and that's very important for our human lives as well as for the lives of environmental creatures. Now, if you go to the next slide, oh, sorry, what I forgot to mention here was the blue balls tell you where we are today, and almost all the blue balls are outside the safe and just space, except the one on aerosols. And that's because we have not crossed the global aerosol boundary, but actually at local level, we have crossed this boundary everywhere because about 7 to 9 million people die annually from air pollution. And that's why it's very important. Now, if we are outside the boundary, the challenge is how do we get back inside the boundary? So in this particular slide, we move to the next slide. We are looking at the concept of justice, and we actually developed a theory of justice based on the literature on justice, but the most important element of that is the no significant harm principle. And the no significant harm is not only harm to humans, it's also harm to nature. And essentially what we said that this means that we have to look at 3 types of justice: interspecies justice, intergenerational justice, and intragenerational justice. And that means how do we align these 3 concepts in a way that we can try and prevent significant harm to either the future or even to current generations or even to species. And that's a sort of a matching process that we try to undertake in order to ensure the future of humans and other species on Earth. We move to the next slide. That's going backwards. If we move to the next slide, so what I explained to you is we have these boundaries, and we are at present outside the boundaries. But we have not yet met the minimum needs of people worldwide. So I'm talking about less than a billion for energy access, up to 4 billion for wash. Those are the latest figures. So basically, these people have not met their minimum needs to energy, water, food, a home, transport, education, healthcare, a little bit of communication. In our research, what we did was we looked at just 4 elements: access to food, water, energy, and a small home, and a little bit of transport. And we calculated what that would mean on the boundaries using the same units as the boundary. So you start with the human right, and then you work through a whole lot of equations to come to CO2 emissions or impact on land or nitrogen. And that showed us that we would actually go further out beyond the safe and just space. So the only way to come back is to give everybody, and that's the white space in this triangle, everybody a minimum. And we all have 3 bulbs in a refrigerator or something like that. And if you all have that, then there is a small space left over, which we have to find a way to allocate. And clearly, if you allocate the remaining space based on the market, because it's scarce, the price will go up so much that only super rich people will be able to buy it. And you're seeing that already with land and water grabbing in different parts of the world. So the question that we have now is, how do we get the entire world to get back into the safe and just space, which is the light blue colored space, while meeting the basic needs of everybody worldwide? So this is not a grandfathered approach. This is a dramatically new transformative approach, and it requires all of us to rethink the way we live. If we move to the next slide. So the next question is, how do we actually do this? And over here we have an AI visualization of what the world would look like if we were able to change it and transform it, including the transformation of our various systems, the energy system, the food system. Now, if you look over here, we're basically saying that if you have boundaries, first of all, you have to, for procedural justice, you have to negotiate with each other whether you accept the boundary. And the next question is downscaling the boundary. And you downscale it to countries, you can downscale it to cities, and you can downscale it to businesses. We decided to focus on cities and businesses because there's already a discussion on the national scale. And what we see at the national scale is countries are really stuck in the way they're thinking about these issues. So we thought maybe it would be easier if we mobilize cities and businesses to use these targets as a way to decide how they should manage their resources. We move to the next slide. So in that downscaling process, we have an elaborate method for how you downscale to your company. And we look at it in terms of various aspects and various steps. But this translation is embedded within a larger transformation process. And in our work, basically, we argue that we need to essentially change consumption patterns in the global north to reduce our needs. And that's why I said to you earlier, if you start with just 3 bulbs in a refrigerator for each of us, then there's a little bit more that you can do. So it's really calling you to start rethinking your consumption patterns. But it also means that in the global south, the consumption patterns could improve a little bit. If you're talking about technology, technology is like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can address a large number of problems. And on the other hand, it creates new problems for us. So the question is, how do we deal with it? And let's take AI. AI is supposed to probably have an energy demand which is almost 1/3 of what we use today. So that's a bit of a challenge. So the question is, how do we do these technologies? Then, of course, we have to radically change our economic systems. It can't be that when we lend money to developing countries because they are a high-risk country that we charge them so much more that we drive them more and more into poverty. We have to have a different system for our economic and financial systems. And finally, we have to change our governance patterns worldwide. So that's basically our narrative. And of course, there's a lot more behind each of these words that has been done by all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Joyita and Wendy. Now, I know that I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have questions. We're going to do questions at the end when we go through all of the speakers. But I just want to highlight the fact that this is a really, I think, a thoughtful, a rigorous, and a transformative and quite radical shift in the way we're actually organizing ourselves in the world. And I will come back to the question of, do you think the World Economic Forum is doing enough in this space when we get to questions? So I'll give you time to prepare for that. So thanks to both of you. And now I'd like to introduce, you can leave the mic there. If Camila and Mariah Seater can come up. We've now got some youth and early career researchers that are going to tell us from their perspective, given the things that they're seeing both from a scientific perspective, but actually what they're seeing on the ground, what do they think needs to happen? Camila.
Well, hi everyone. This panel is a little bit intimidating. A lot has to happen. I think most of the approaches that we have today, it's a top-down approach, which is necessary, but a community-based approach has lacking since every day. You know, like I work on the ground mostly with Amazonian communities, and they know what is happening. They are feeling their lives at risk. The Witness report says that Brazil is the top 2 countries killing Earth defenders, and 80% of them are indigenous people. For the first time in Brazil, we had a paper published by indigenous scientists. And we are a country like with university with 200 years. So if science doesn't match those people, I think the problem is the issue is not the science. The issue is the politicians that, despite anything, they, just for the sake of power, they leapfrog, like they leave science, they leave people. They just want to keep their positions. We've been talking a lot about the boundaries and negotiating. We introduced language in COPs, but by the end of the day, closed doors, drill, baby, drill. That's the conversation, right? I've been seeing my country say, we're going to go green, but we also want to drill. It just doesn't make sense. We cannot serve two kings, right? We cannot serve fossil fuels and go green at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. So from my perspective, what is lacking is being transparent and radical thinker on do the real change and not trying to just, fix some stuff from inside.
Great minds think alike, because I was thinking the same thing. For context, I'm from Alaska. So we know what that means. There are resources there that people have a real keen interest in. And there is the same narrative. And how do we engage policymakers to really listen and dive in? And it starts with the community-driven initiatives and making sure communities feel empowered. My research focus is domestic violence, because as temperature rises, domestic violence rises. And there's research that was published, I think, last year, that on an annual mean, for every 1 degree Celsius, the temperature goes up, domestic violence prevalence goes up 5%, just about. And in Alaska, we have for the United States, we have some of the highest domestic violence rates in the country. So thinking about my home state, that's just atrocious. So really engaging people on the ground, doing the work, working with communities, especially indigenous communities, I think we have to bring that to policymakers and keep coming and showing up.
I think I have a positive story to share around that. So last year I joined one of the finalist team at the X Prize Rainforest competition. And we ended up winning a bonus prize for our community approach. What we were doing 1 year before the finals of the competition, we started to build relationship with the community and doing testing with the technology. But we did capacity building first, and then we presented product. We got the feedback loop. We make the changes they suggest. We come back with the final project. What is happening most of the time is someone just go with the solution and says implemented that without them participating on the co-creation and co-designing of the solutions. I think we know the answers, but we want to implement the answers our way. And it's not going to work if they don't participate from the beginning, right?
Yeah, it's more like calling in, not calling out, and making sure that there's enough room at the table, bringing enough seats, and making sure that includes youth, right? The young people, because they've got the ideas too.
I'm going to ask a couple questions on this. So I think what we're getting here is that there's certainly not enough community involvement. There's not enough indigenous knowledge involvement in science and in the policy discussions that are happening. But what would your message be for the World Economic Forum in terms of both of those things as well? And then also, we've got Alaska, we've got the Amazon, and we've got COP30. How do we connect those dots? So first of all, let's talk about the message to the World Economic Forum, and then we'll talk about COP30.
Well, the World Economic Forum has to stand up and not complying with the backlash that is happening for science and indigenous rights. If you look previous years, was growing the presence of indigenous people at the World Economic Forum. 3 years ago was a whole delegation here. They found an Indigenous Initiative Council where is the council down? Where is those people here? They are not here this year, but they were here 3 years ago. What is happening? They want to compete with the US right now. So if the organization really wants to improve the state of the world, they need to go back to the previous declaration or statements and stand up for that things, right?
Yeah, representation matters. And this is my first time here, so I'm learning a lot this whole week. But I would say representation matters and making sure that the communities that are most impacted by climate are here too. And I'm not seeing them.
So around COP30, I would say one thing. Finally, we have a president. That's one thing. we knew before. André is a very experienced diplomat in the area, in the field, and he will do a good job. But unfortunately, what I feel is we are missing another type of leadership. It's like we don't have a Christine Figueiredo doing all the work for a second Paris Agreement, and we need that type of leadership now. I know Brazil can convene people in a way that is powerful, but I don't think we can reach even the 1.3 billion that we need for climate finance right now. Regarding infrastructure, we're gonna deliver. You know, we say in Brazil, jeitinho brasileiro, we find a way. You know, we're gonna serve a good space. Won't be a Davos, won't be luxurious, but will be enough for the conference and for the conversations. But what we really need is a global community coming to the conference demanding real action from the member states. I think is more than that, more than infrastructural issues.
Great. And Mariah, not to put you on the spot, but you are the American in the room here on stage. And of course, the Trump administration got out of the Paris Agreement for the second time. So that being said, there's a lot of non-national state actors in the U.S. that are working actively on climate and will continue, hopefully, to do so. But what would your message be, if I may put you on the spot? You're able to waive the question, don't worry. But I would like to give you this space if you would like to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, I share in a community of disappointment. I think it's just unfortunate, but it's not unpredictable. I think a lot of people saw that coming, just given his administration and the things he's been very vocal about. So we need to be armed and ready to keep talking about it and keep showing up.
Thank you very much, Camilla and Mariah. Thanks very much. Now, Sandrine is delayed, she might not be able to get back up the mountain. So if I may do that, if I can invite Jane and Renata to the stage. So Jane Madgwick, who is the Exec Director of the Global Commons Alliance, and Renata Polini, who is, are you the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Wholesome?
No, Head of Nature and Sustainable
Head of Nature and Sustainable Construction. Apologies that I didn't quite get that right. We've heard a lot about the science. We've heard a lot about indigenous knowledge, which is another form of science, as well as community action. But I think what we really need to do is also take a look at how do we get science to action. Joyita mentioned that we're looking at cities and we're looking at businesses. I'm a business school professor, so I'm right there on that page. But let's actually see what is actually happening. We're hearing a lot about climate backsliding, but I think that both Jane and Renata can give us some impressions about what's working as well, and what are some good examples here. Over to you, Jane.
Okay, thank you. And I'm so happy to be sitting in a tent. I love camping, and yeah, my tents are getting smaller and smaller as I'm getting older. Sorry, bigger and bigger as I'm getting older. I have difficulty getting in, but it's a great setting. Thanks.
Happy to have you here, Jane.
Thank you. So Global Commons Alliance is, we've heard from the Earth Commission, that's one of the stars and the components of the Global Commons Alliance. And it was formed really to drive collective action. So we've heard just now that we know more and more about what the safe and just space looks like. We're more and more able to quantify it. And we're starting to see what the pathways to get back to that space might look like. And this is really the North Star for driving this collective action. So it's science-driven, but really recognizing that and a big focus on the economic actors, so companies and cities, because they are responsible for a lot of the pressure, but they're equally more nimble, more able to quickly adjust and act on that. But they won't succeed without the communities, without the citizens coming along. So that's a big part of our message, how to work with also traditional and indigenous knowledge and wisdom. And we also need the countries to support. So the policies and the regulations to help drive that action forward. And one of the components of the Global Commons Alliance, which has been active for about 5 years now, is the Science Based Targets Network. And this is a network of more than 80 organizations which have come together. I think it's really an achievement in itself that the nature community came together and have really brought together the guidance, the methodologies that would allow companies, and just starting on the city's work now, would allow companies to see the pathway for change that they can walk along, to provide them with a framework and a step-by-step set of actions they need to take that will allow them to make that change, to reduce their pressure on the natural systems and to increase their positive impact. So it's all about credible nature action. And I want to point out, this is not the only mechanism for enabling economic actors to move towards net zero and nature positive, but it has a couple of USPs. And the main one is that it's embedded in the science. So it is linked with the Earth system science that you've just heard about. And it's not about making commitments. It's about driving action. And it's about the targets being made public on how to get there. And that being, I was going to say accredited, but that is actually the wrong term. Verified, I think is the right term. So these are big differences. And yeah, this is actually makes business sense for many companies, I'm sure we'll hear, because without this kind of guidance, companies and cities are flying blind in an increasingly risky world. And when your business, as most businesses do, depend on eventually the natural resources, then this is a risk which will find its way back into the finances. So this provides a way to understand those risks and to build resilience at a very strategic level in the company and city, in the economic development planning. So it has a strategic value. It's not just CSR. Unfortunately, so far, it hasn't really reached the boardroom and landed, but we are at an early stage. So far, we have proof of concept. There are around 17 companies who have really worked through the methodology, 3 of which, one of whom is represented here, have gone public with that, which is really sticking their necks out, I would say. There are many, many more who are involved, and there's around 160 already looking into this because they want to be ahead of the curve, they want to be ready, and they probably also see that they need to find a strategic way to manage the risks that are coming. So there's a lot of work underway now to help to streamline the methodology, to make it more feasible, to make it more applicable, to make it connect with all the other frameworks and requirements that companies need to meet in order and to really line it up with climate. So we say not climate plus nature, because actually climate is sorry for the analogy, but it's the kind of tip of the iceberg of which nature is the whole. And so if you ignore the rest of that iceberg and just drive for climate action, that's also very risky. So we see climate as part of the nature piece. It's therefore part of this methodology. And we're aligning these narratives to make it simpler in a way for companies to grasp and to move forward for a high performance standard, but without simplifying it to the extent that it's not meaningful. So what's also really important is that the science base stays robust and that these targets really mean something. So yeah, we're delighted that there are a few companies like Holcim who we'll hear from who really trailblazers. And now we're really looking to bring, not just tens of companies, but really hundreds and thousands of companies in the coming 5 years into this process to really create impact. Because success isn't setting the target. Success is eventually that nature is better off and that we're really addressing climate action as part of that. Finally, just to say that part of our strategy, as I started to say, is to connect this. So change tends to start locally and drive up, so this bottom-up change. But what the Alliance is trying to do is connect and stimulate that bottom-up change, connect it with the global, the regional and the national enabling environment, the top-down part. So we try to be that connective tissue, keep everybody abreast of the whole system picture, and really help to mobilise through all the various partnerships that we have.
Thank you very much for that, Jane. It sounds like Holcim's a pretty rare beast, 1 out of 3 that have gone public with this. So absolutely delighted, Renata, that you've been able to come up to Basecamp. Maybe you can tell us what Holcim's doing, and then I think I've got some follow-up questions to dive a little bit deeper on that.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So for those who do not know, Holcim, we are a material construction company. We produce cement, concrete, aggregates, roofing, facades, many elements that are going to be used in construction. It is a Swiss-based company, but we are a multinational company. We are present worldwide. So just a little bit of a story. When I was hired to work for Holcim in 2020, they said, we want to have a head of nature. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard about a head of nature in other companies. So I said, I think these guys are being serious. And plus, the idea was that I would report to the Chief Sustainability Officer, and she was sitting in the executive committee, so reporting direct to the CEO. And we would have some board meetings, and the main goal, board meetings and also executive meetings, and the main goal of my role was to develop the nature strategy for the group. So I accepted the challenge because I said this is quite unique in a big corporation, and I started to learn about the impacts of the sector. And at the end, during my journey at Holcim, I realized that what happened is that we are very much aware of our impacts and dependence on nature, in particular when we are extracting the raw materials that we need to produce the product. So limestone, gypsum, any raw material that we need, we are impacting biodiversity. And we are also very dependent on fresh water. And what the heck, it's like concrete. Why do we need fresh water? And we start to dig and see, is there any replacements that we can do from, not using fresh water? And yes, there are plenty of levers that we can do. We can use non-fresh water. We can partner with communities, use the wastewater, treat it, and put in the concrete. It's the same performance. It's exactly the same performance. We are able to prove that. But then it comes to the policies, because in many, many countries, we are not allowed to use water that's not fresh. So in the building codes, it's very strict, because it's about safety at the end, and I can understand. But it's also, the sector is very traditional. It's a traditional sector, so we need to change that. And we are trying, with some pilots case. It's not every single country, but in many countries we are not allowed to use, water that's not fresh, and so on and so forth. But so, I'm just can I continue to say the journey?
Please, keep going.
Then we launched the strategy in 2020, the nature strategy, and it was the first time that we managed to set water and biodiversity measurable targets. And we knew that the Science-Based Target for Nature, and plus the TNFD, Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, they were just starting at that time. And we said, I remember my line manager at that time, she said, we go ahead, but we are going to be part of these frameworks, because with that, we are able to adapt in case we need to adapt, and we are also able to, validate our targets as a science-based target. So we did that, and at the same time, we joined the corporate engagement program from the Science Based Target Network, and we, starting to engage with SB10. And then it came up the phase that we could apply to pilot the science-based targets for nature methodology. We applied for it, and we were selected among, as Jenny said, 17 companies were piloting this methodology. We were successful. It's not that easy. It's quite complex. You need expertise to go through the pilot, the methodology. But it's also not that difficult. It's a very logical way to get to the targets. It's very, very logical. And we went through the process, and we managed to validate targets. In Mexico, in a basin in Mexico, Moctezuma Basin, and we are now, for this year, we are going to continue our journey. We want, the plan is to try to validate with the SB10 10 more basin targets. And yeah, that's it. I mean, we are, trying to validate our targets, because when we launched, was not SB10 was not ready, but we said we are going to be part of it, and we are now trying to really validate our commitments. And it has been a very, very fruitful conversation, because we come from the business, and we also know what's feasible and what's not feasible, and things that SB10 can improve. For example, we said it would be helpful to have a sector guidance, not for freshwater, but for the land. Because today the methodology on the land is not applicable for our business, for example. And they accepted the challenge, and I understand they are working on this. It's moving. I see nature is moving much faster than climate, but not fast enough.
Right. So I have two questions. And the first one is, what part of Holcim's organizational culture or leadership made them really start and continue this journey and make the journey public, when so many of your peers are not doing this?
Yeah.
So what is it about Holcim, or the people, the leadership inside it, or the shareholders, or the board? What is driving this acceleration?
I mean, we are very well, nature is the new climate. We are seeing the nature frameworks are being replicated, the climate frameworks are being replicated for nature. We are seeing regulations coming up. We are dependent on nature, and for what? We want to try to reduce this dependence on nature, in particular on freshwater. We don't see why. There are ways, and we can leave this for communities, we can leave this for who else want to use, but it's we see these needs, and our executive committee, our leaders, they are very visionary. We do have, we have in companies, you have bonus, and most of the companies, the bonus are only based on financial driven, I don't know, even sales or whatever it is, EBIT. We have sustainability targets for the senior leaders. So part of their incentives has to do with sustainability, and there are basically 3 targets on sustainability. One is based on climate, the other one is freshwater withdrawal, and the third one is circularity. So we have this remuneration scheme, because we want to incentivize them to use less and less and less and less, and then they get as a I would say a recognition, bonus. But I don't think there are many companies that are in this level as well. So I do believe that, we have this. At the end, it's a lot to do with leadership. We have big leaders and strong leaders, and I hope, because in every single company there are changes, leadership changes, and I do hope that the next ones would continue to drive the nature agenda forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So then my follow-up question to that is the opposite. So Nick and I were in a session on Monday with Peter Bacher, who is the president and CEO of World Business Council for Sustainable Development. I know Holcim is a member of that. And Peter, and I heard it throughout the week, I also heard it from Jesper Broden, where this idea that the actual leadership of many companies are certainly moving backwards on climate, or at least publicly backwards on climate and nature. So I mean, from that perspective, you're in the business world. You have peers in all these companies. What's your perspective on the state of play right now? Obviously, you're one of three. Holcim is one of three, but there's a whole bunch of work that is happening, even if it's not public. But are we moving backwards, or is this just an anxiety that I have?
I don't see this at Holcim, from my perspective. You know, one thing that also moves us, it's the investors. Investors are asking for it, and the investors are starting asking about nature. And they are an expert in climate. It took a while for them to be expert. It was not that long, maybe 2 years, but they are very expert. They know maybe more than us in many fronts. And nature is starting also. So I don't see this, at least for Holcim, in my conversation, just that we announced in October during COP16 that we announced publicly the SBTN targets. I really don't see that, but it could be that in other sectors or maybe in other companies, and that could be also, that has to do maybe also with leadership change. I don't know. But from the Holcim perspective, we continue to be very committed to deliver our climate targets, which are SBTi validated, and also the nature target that started with one target, but we want to, hopefully, set all the targets that we need on the priority basis based on the science.
Okay, thank you so much, Jane and Renata. Thank you very much. I'd like to, and you can stay here where you are, but I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience, and then I'll walk around with a microphone in case you've got questions for also our earlier speakers. So anybody have some questions? Yes, thanks. And if you can say your name.
Thank you so much. My name is Maria. I just have one question. We all know the framework of SMART goal setting, right? I heard all the parts besides time, the deadline, how much time we have.
Good question. Who would like to answer, including some of our earlier speakers? Renata, we might as well start with you.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons why when we developed the strategy in 2020 and 2021 when we launched it, was do we want to wait until this is ready? SBT, TNFD, we said, no, let's start moving. And to be very honest, one of our targets, because my boss was like, oh, you have to put targets in all the main material business segments. And some of these business segments, it's not that we had a robust baseline, but the idea was, let's have a target because we are going to start reducing our water usage or fresh water withdrawal immediately, because they will see that we have a global target and every country has a target. Every single plant, they have targets. So, we said, let's go ahead. I mean, I don't know. I think it's more on science. I think we don't have much time. So that's why we Holcim by moving, as much as we can. Maybe Jane, you can complement.
Yeah, a couple of points. So SBTN framework is very much linked with the Global Biodiversity Framework, which has set targets according to 2030. So there is a time element there. And for any particular company, as I understand it, it will indicate what needs to happen, where it needs to happen, also when it needs to happen, with some consideration of the landscape context as well. So time is there. It's also very much there for the investors, which Renata mentioned. They are taking generally a longer term picture. They are very interested in the sustainability of the companies who are seeking their investments. So they care about the resilience, and they will take that timescale and push for actions earlier to reduce the costs later.
Yeah, I'm just going to tag in on that, and then I'll pass it over to this lady. I mean, I'm a social scientist, and I work on global risk, and I bring in the natural science into the boardroom. I'm really worried about time. I think we are running out of time, and I think we do have a backslide, or we have a vague sets of time frames set in boardrooms. So I think the issue here we have is, well, Holcim, thankfully, if it's indeed true, are moving forward and fast and publicly accountable. Many are not, or we don't simply know what we're doing, and it's going to be a collective. So we can go off the cliff anyway, even if a couple of good companies actually do a good job. So there's a systemic question here about time and cumulative impacts. I'm going to pass over to this lady here for a question.
Thank you very much, Gail. My name is Sunny. I'm come from Netherlands as well, based in Maastricht. And my company, Mars Ventures, I'm very active in developing digital assay and also bring nature assay on chain. And one thing I'm doing is very new nature as an asset class. Try to really identify, everybody know about carbon credit, but there's soon there will be biodiversity credit, plastic credit, all these kind of things. My question is that, in fact, climate is a very complex problem, which requiring interdisciplinary collaboration, engaging multi-stakeholders. How do you say in your work, because you're doing excellent research, so many great insight and framework, how can we bridge the gap and support, for instance, the finance investors to speed up the process to understand, because we for sure need those fundamental base in order to create the asset class. So how can we work together to speed up this?
Thanks. Good question. I actually wish I'd talked to you before I was interviewed by Wall Street Journal this morning on that exact question. So I will not attempt to give the answer that I gave them. But maybe I could ask Jane or Wendy or Joyita to comment on this issue of biodiversity and how we bring that in. Wendy, if you could maybe, why don't you come to the front? We've got some seats up here, and if I can ask you to come over, it's easier for me to share the mic. We're at a base camp, guys, so we're not in the big forums hall. So why don't you sit here, Joyita, and then I can share this mic with you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think these are really, really important questions. We have little time, and we do need to collaborate, and absolutely getting the investors to really be investing in our nature positive, in the areas that we know we need investment is really important. I think we need scientists round the table with investors using frameworks like we presented today to deepen the discussion. A lot of our investments are investing in, fossil fuels, in polluting environments, in things that are not good for justice for people, and we need to bring together the conversations so that we can actually develop solutions, and we need to do it really rapidly.
More dialogue.
Yeah.
But last year I got on my birthday, for my birthday I got a small forest in Costa Rica and 10 trees in Ghana. And I thought,
That's
great.
a big birthday gift, a whole
It was a
forest in
very
Costa Rica.
expensive gift. And then I looked it up because I thought, what's the GPS location of that forest? And do I own it for a second, or do I own it for a month, or do I own it for a year? And there's no data. And on those 10 trees I got in Ghana, I do not know if there's a tree there with my name on it, or it's just 10 seeds on the ground with a little bit of water, and that's it. So there's so much fake stuff happening, and it's unbelievable how much money these people spent on those gifts. And I don't see anything real behind it. And it's not one or two companies. They're all of them. A large number of them are just doing crazy things which are not going to help the environment. And that's my worry. And the second point, when you're talking about environment as an asset class, I get very worried when I think of that, because I immediately think about commodification and then the sale of all these goods. And I'm really frightened about that. And in water, I would say, don't commodify more than 5%, if at all, or 10%. I would like to have a number there, because there you see anyway that we are trading in water in one way or the other, but not 100%, because then there'll be no water in the canals. There'll only be in the golf courses. No, it is a serious question. It has been raised in a publication. I didn't make it up just now. So I'm really scared about the whole asset class narrative. But she's the economist.
It was a great question. I agree with everything you've just said, Joyita. However, I also agree with those who say we haven't got time to change the whole financial system, just to wipe it out and start again. We have to adapt the one we've got. I have heard many times that, we need this. We need nature. I hope the broad nature, not only biodiversity, but, the water and in connection with land assets as well. We need that to become an asset class. Otherwise, it just doesn't get into the equations. But we need to be aware of how to do that well. I'm an ecologist, not an economist. I think we need really to collaborate with those finance institutions to find this transition pathway to make that shift. But what is for sure is that the financial assets, and those capitals are linked with the natural capitals, the social capitals, the human capitals. And as those degrade, so do the financial ones. So there isn't really a choice for those finance institutions. They need to work with the Earth system scientists to help find these solutions.
Yeah, and I am going to actually ask Jacob to ask a question, because we're hearing a lot about natural capital, we're hearing a lot about external stuff, but I mean, inner development goals, you and I have talked a lot about this in the past. Surely you have a question about that's relating to the inner side, and if you don't want to ask it, I'll ask it on your behalf.
Thank you for a really great conversation, great moderation. I guess my question is about what drives us forward, and I think there's a twofold thing there, and one thing is that, in a sense, I've been thinking that it's our survival instincts that are actually killing the planet, because we grew up with like a want for a lot of things because there was such a scarcity of resources, and it led to a reptilian brain set that was just chasing for things. And then we got this beautiful thing, which is the frontal lobe, that can actually create the wonders that we've done. But we're pretty bad at sort of, because we see today in America how definitely like the power forces won over the more moderated, let's build the world together. Whereas, I'm sorry, this is not a question.
This is not a question. May I help ask a question on this
No,
phase?
okay. No, but it's so interesting because we're talking about all of these targets and we need them. We're talking about the driving forces. There's one thing that obviously all, like oil, is just old technology. We just know that, and it's just sticking there because of money. That's the only thing. But we are going to go forward. But what are the driving forces? And that's where I think the inner development goals comes in, because it's about finding out what kind of driving forces do we need. How do we need to feel at home at this planet? And how can we implement more humility, more trust, more our inner compass, compassion? And because these things are obviously what makes humankind beautiful. And the problems we have now, it's an ugly old side of a power searching human being. So how can we lift these forces? Okay, that was a question.
That was a question, and tagging onto that question, I mean, I think it is about the inner development, and I think it is about trust. I think though the world needs more courage. I mean, we're losing the battle. Like, as a social scientist working on global risk, it's just so clear. We are actually losing the battle. We have not lost the battle. That is a different framing. So if we're losing it, and yet we do have advances, and we do have some really good examples of people moving things forward, how do we dig deeper and get individual courage and collective courage? So I'm wondering if any of the earlier youth voices, I know they had to rush off to something, so I don't know if Mariah and Camilla, they're gone, but if any of the other youth voices in the room want to pitch in on that, that's good. And that's our close. We've got a couple of minutes, so fast commentation on courage. All right. Okay, some people that haven't talked. So let's these two ladies in the back, the lady with the ball cap first. Introduce yourself.
Me?
Yeah, you've
Okay.
got the ball cap.
Okay, so maybe I'm the elephant in the room because we are nuclear scientists promoting nuclear. I hope you're not shocked.
I am, but go ahead.
You are. Okay. So this is funny because it has been an uphill battle for us to tell the world that nuclear has to be included on the conversation table. We managed to be at the COP after Bonn, because when COP happened at Bonn,
short. We've got about 2 minutes of time left.
So all I'm trying to say is that it's funny because it was an uphill battle for us to tell the world that we have to be part of the conversation, energy conversation. And we are the only ones that are not shocked that oil is going to continue with baby drill baby, because we know that for an energy transition, we will need, if you want a proper, because we're scientists, so we have scenarios, so we know that if we want a proper energy transition, oil will be needed.
Yeah, but there's a difference between oil is needed than the situation we've got with this. So the question now is on courage. It's not on promoting nuclear. So please focus on wrapping up this question, and we can do another session
so the
later on
courage
that.
was only about the fact that although we are the ones who suffered most because of the petrol lobby, we have been ousted because we are the ones who can actually replace them because we're 24/7, non-intermittent, and we're dispatchable. We have had lobbies against us.
Thank you. Now I'm now going to move to Thea. Thank you very much.
I just want to add to a sentiment that's been shared by you, Gail, and James, if he's still here, and a lot of people, in terms of courage in your comms. Now, I do climate comms for a living. I'm freelance, so I encounter many clients, and I want to reiterate the need to move away from the confusing and opaque scientific language. That might be good in the boardroom, it might be good among scientists, but to get the buy-in from the public, you need to speak to people in their language. And I don't just mean an actual language, I mean don't be afraid to use humour, don't be afraid to use memes, don't be afraid to get on people's level and bring them on board, because it can be alienating if you can't break through the academic language. So I am really glad that there's reps of companies here who are including that in their business plans. And yeah, I hope from a comms perspective, it is understandable and entertaining and engaging too.
Well, thank you for that, Thea. Certainly that's something Arctic Base Camp and our sister Climate Base Camp, which speaks science to culture or is trying to experiment in that space, is trying to do. I would like to thank all of the panelists, and I'd like to thank all of the audience. I hope you're not too cold at the back. I am boiling up here at the front. So thank you for coming to Base Camp, and let's hope that we get science in a much deeper way as we move forward to COP30. Thanks, everybody.
We have a lot of communication also.
Yes.
For energy transition, climate conservation. I do. After Russia bombed the research center in Ukraine, we were asked to get out of LinkedIn, but you have like email. Yeah, you can take my email.
I know completely. You sent me a message on Monday yesterday.
Let's see if I need to kill you or not. Oh, we are.